So we have conjoined triangles, right? Two triangles that are connected to each other right there. And then they tell us that two lines are parallel, A, E, and C, D. And the rest of the information is already listed on these pictures. They want to know how long is this segment right here. And we already know part of it is 8. We just don't know what CB is. And that's really what they're trying to ask us is what CB is. So instead of just asking for that, they give us an extra 2 steps because as we get to number 18, they're banking on you, right, figuring out what CB is and then just putting that answer, and then you forget to add it to 8, and even though you did a lot of the right steps, you get the wrong one. So don't fall for it. And one other thing that I see is that because we're dealing with parallel lines and conjoined triangles, we're going to first need to prove that this is similar and understand which are our corresponding angles. And I want to make sure I don't mess this up. So what always helps me is I'll actually draw. So let's say this is C and D and this is A and E. I'm going to just draw those lines because this is how we learned about things like alternative interior angles and same side interior and things like that, corresponding angles. And I'm going to draw this line from here to here. And it makes it easier for me to just see that like, oh, all right, this angle, let me just do it in red so it's a little bit more simple. This angle here is this angle here. And that this angle here is this angle here. And they're actually congruent because they are corresponding angles. They're alternative interior. You don't need to know the term, but you just do want to remember that when you have alternative interior or this pattern here, they are congruent angles. And by that same logic, we know that D and A are congruent because these are vertical angles. We know that this here is congruent with that. And so now we know what's corresponding with what. And we see that across from E, we have 10, and across from C, we have 5. What that tells us is that this smaller triangle is half the size of the larger, or this larger one is twice as big. And we don't know what CB is, but we know that it's across from green. We know that this line here is across from D, and that A is across from 8. So that means that this must be 4 because this triangle is half the size. That's the proportion. You can also just set it up as 4. I'm sorry, we should say we don't know what that is. It would be, let's just call that X over 5 would be equal to 8 over 10, whereas 10 and 5 are our red measurements that we see up there. Now, ultimately, we figure that it is 4, and from there, we just add our two lengths together, and it is 12.